after that moment, it ceases to exist and God recreates it. Right? So instead of one where Ibn Sina has an idea where God creates a thing and the thing's existence sort of sustains, it maintains through time. God maintains it through time in a continuity. You can imagine like it's analog, you know? We have the difference between digital, now everything's digital, but it used to be analog, right? Analog is like continuity, you know, like you put a record on the record player and it goes around and there's these little grooves and then there's the needle. So it's a continuous line, right? Where digital, everything's broken up into like tiny little bytes. Yeah? So you can say that for Ibn Sina, and for the philosopher, time is continual and analog. Time and being are continual and analog. For the Asherites, time and being are digital. They're atoms. There's like time atoms. It's like a slice. Like when you take we used to make cartoons or pixels. You could talk about like in terms of pixels on a screen, pixels, or when they used to have cartoons or just scroll and each one is one picture and you go by, and when you flip one after the other. So the phenomena of continuity is actually the succession of stills. Yeah? And so basically what we have is a succession of moments of creation. So instead of conservation and existence, and the other view we have continuous creation. Every moment, so when it comes to be, it exists only for that moment of its coming to be. And then it comes to be again, and again, and again. Right? So that's what's going on here. That's why he's saying the act is not related to the agent after it already exists, but only at the moment of its origin. He says that this moment is the very bringing from non-existence to existence. And if we deny that, there's no meaningful sense in which it is the act of the agent. Okay? We're going to see when we get to the stirring the water issue. Okay, so I gave you this two bits of argument, right? Everybody okay? Any question? Okay. I got 3 minutes to go. Let's see if I can get through this in a few minutes. Okay, the philosopher argue this next argument. They say we get two choices here. The act exists either with the agent or after the agent, right? And they're going to give us an argument that it has to act with the agent, yeah? But first of all, if it is coexistent, if it's simultaneous, that's what we want to say. When they say with, I mean it's at the same time with the agent. It exists in the same time as the agent. The act doesn't exist in a following time, but it exists in the same time with the agent. And if that's the case, they say then an eternal agent must have an eternal act, because if the agent's eternal and the act is always with the agent, then the act is eternal. If the act is not eternal, and that there's some time when the act's not there, well, in that time the agent won't be the agent, because to be the agent is to be bringing the existence to the act, right? So if the agent is eternal, the act must be eternal. That's to say, since we believe God's eternal, then the world has to be eternal. Or conversely, if you think the world had a beginning, that means that God must have a beginning. And since we know God doesn't have a beginning, obviously the world has to be eternal. That's kind of the argument, right? On the other hand, if you want to say that the act exists after the agent, in a different time from the agent, right? That's impossible. And they give this argument. It's impossible for the act to exist after the agent. So they say a guy is taken in, he's stirring water. He got a bowl of water, and he stirs it with his finger, right? Now, if the water moves, and now the movement of the water is the act, and the agent is the moving finger in this analogy, right? If the water moves after the finger, then that means the finger and the water would have to occupy the same place at the same time, right? Now let's say here's my finger and here's the water, and my finger is pushing the water. Now, if the water moves only after my finger moves, that means that somehow my finger is going to end up being in the same place as the water. Two things can't be in the same place at the same time, right? So that's not going to work. if the water moves before the finger, right? Well, why would anybody think so, but just in case, right? If the water moves before the finger, that means that there would be some empty space, right? Between the water and my finger, you know? So the water moves with the finger. When I stir water, the water moves with the finger. This is the whole issue of imensena, just in the natural sense of cause. The cause is simultaneous with the effect. What is the real, actual, essential cause of a thing is simultaneous with its effect. It exists with its effect at any time that its effect exists, right? And its effect will never exist when the cause does not exist. Right? If the cause exists without the effect, it wouldn't be the cause of the effect. And if the effect exists without the cause at a different time when the cause didn't exist, it wouldn't be the effect of the exist of the cause. So last thing, the act, Ghazali responds, interesting way. He says, yeah, the act can be with the agent. Probably he agrees. It doesn't matter. It can be with or after whatever. It doesn't matter. The only thing that's important is that it has to be created, because an eternal act is impossible. Because an act is something that exists after non-existence. Right? Yeah? Now, when we talk about the cause and effect, of course, an eternal cause and an eternal effect is possible. Any eternal effect is possible. For example, God's knowledge is a cause of his knowing. And his knowing, we say, is an effect of his knowledge, right? But it's not an act. Yeah? So we're not talking about cause and effect. We're talking about act. Act cannot be eternal because act is an effect that comes to be. Yeah? And then the interesting thing is when he talks about the water analogy that they give. He said this water analogy is an obfuscation, because in that analogy the philosophers made it out like the finger was the agent. And Ghazali says the finger is not the agent. The owner of the finger is the agent. The willer, the person who wants to turn his finger in the water, is the agent. And the finger is just his instrument, right? So, since the agent is not the finger, but the one who wills to move the finger is the agent, right? It's got it kind of wrong. Now, he then says, if we imagine the will is eternal, imagine this person who's willing to move his finger eternally, right? Then the movement of the finger would also be eternal, right? Wait a minute, what's going on here? I thought he said the world and the act must be existing after not existing. But he says it's still an act because each part of the movement is a temporal creation. I'm stirring the water, and I go around once, and I go around again, right? Each time, right? Each part, the movement has parts. A movement, right, by its nature has parts because it's always in motion. Yeah? So, there could be this eternal movement, but since it's a movement, it can still be an act because each part of the movement is a temporal creation. It's a movement, it is eternally coming to be, right? So now we have actually, in this case, the difference between something which is eternally coming to be and something which is eternally existent, right? Because to be eternally coming to be is to be eternally kind of in that midpoint of transfer from non-existence to existence, right? I mean, let's imagine that I'm continually moving around in circles, right? And I'm just, for eternity, I'm doing this, yeah? Now, it's a motion. And the nature of that motion is that it's always going from somewhere to something else, right? Which means that there's always change going on, and there's always movement from non-existence to existence, right? Right? Here I am, no I'm not, here I am, no I'm not, here I am, no I'm not, yeah? So it's like that. And each part is a coming to be, so there's a difference between an eternal existence, which would in fact be who? That would be God, right? Because he's eternally, completely being. He's never changing. He's eternally existent, right? But an eternal act would be something that's always coming to be, like somebody eternally stirring the water with their finger. There's always non-being and the transfer from non-existence to existence going on in there, around and around, right? So in the last bit, he says, as for the movement of the water, we might not say that it is a result of his action, the person, but instead the action of God. Because as we're going to see later, the Asherites think that nothing causes anything at all but God. So even the guy, he's not the one stirring his finger around, it's God doing it, right? But in whatever way we take it, so we can take it either way, we don't have to commit ourselves in either case on that question. Still, it is an act in as much as it is created, except that it is eternally being created, it being an act in as much as it is created. So, we've arrived at somewhat of a different idea of things than we kind of thought was going on when we started. And later we can discuss, or we will discuss, inshallah, Ibn Rushd's response to Ghazali's argument here. And I think we'll see some similarities. But the main difference still being this digital analog thing. Okay? All right. Thank you for your patience.